I'm Lucy Moore. I'm at the Chalk Valley History Festival, and I have two fantastic women here talking about remarkable women in history and their own books, which collide in interesting ways. So I have Bea Rowlett here, who's going to talk about Mary Wollstonecraft briefly, and Marianne Sieghart, who's talking about the authority gap, which is the way that women leaders are less respected than their male counterparts and have been through history, and what we can do about it. So Bea, if we could start with you.
So I'm here to talk about Mary Wollstonecraft, whose part of her life I reenacted in my book, In Search of Mary, an extraordinary sort of treasure hunt that she went on. And when I first found out about her, I had no idea of the iconic status and the significance of the role that she occupies in British Enlightenment history, that she was in effect the chief architect of what we now call human rights. She was writing about women's rights and about human rights before those terms really existed, and doing so from a really curiously horrible background, really a very unpromising background. So she was an exceptional person whose legacy is gigantic and very relevant today. The story that I undertook was to retrace a journey, a very improbable sounding journey that she undertook in 1795, when she went off with her own baby from the jaws of the Reign of Terror in Paris, to search for some missing silver that her dodgy boyfriend had smuggled out and lost off the coast of Norway. So that was kind of my entree into the world of Wollstonecraft, and I've never looked back.
Lovely, thank you,
Coming at it ever since.
You can see why. And Marianne, if you talk about the authority gap, please.
So for this book, The Authority Gap, which is the gap between the extent to which we're prepared to take women as seriously as men. And it's the mother of all gender gaps, really, because if you don't take women as seriously as men, you're going to hire them less, promote them less, pay them less. And this is something that all women will recognise, the sense that we all assume a man knows what he's talking about until he proves otherwise, whereas for women, it's just all too often the other way around. And this relates to our sort of reactions to women in authority, to women in power, to female leaders. And so I've interviewed about 50 really remarkable women for the book, who are women leaders in their fields, prime ministers, presidents, heads of the Supreme Court, that sort of thing. And they've all come up against this in the course of their life. And I also look through history at the problems that women face. And the problem is that we have these really sneaky stereotypes right at the bottom of our brains, which tell us that women ought to be demure and warm and caring and submissive and unselfish, and that men are allowed to be confident and assertive and be leaders. And the trouble is that if a woman therefore wants to be a leader and shows those sorts of character traits of being confident and assertive and showing leadership, we tend to feel really uncomfortable, and we recoil, and we think, oh, she's a bit too abrasive, a bit too strident, a bit too aggressive.
Too much.
So, too much, exactly. Overbearing, literally, too much bearing, too much authority. And so what I examine in the book is where these stereotypes come from, what we can do about it, how we can recognise when our unconscious bias, it's called unconscious for a reason, comes into our consciousness and makes us think these things about women with authority. And instead how we should actually celebrate women having power, having authority, and just having as much agency as men, which is all we really ask for.
I think we should end with Mary Wollstonecraft's great quote in her riposte to Rousseau.
The wonderful quote, "I do not wish women to have power over men, but over themselves."
Hear, hear.